Hello everyone. On behalf of Savision, I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar entitled The Top 5 Reasons to Migrate to Ops Manager 2012. Our guest speaker today is Cameron Fuller, a principal consultant with Catapult Systems. He's also a Microsoft MVP for Ops Manager, co-author of 2 existing books about that same subject, Microsoft Operations Manager, and is currently working on his 3rd book. He brings over 15 years of infrastructure management experience to industries including retail, education, healthcare, distribution, transportation, and energy industries. Without further ado, we will now join the webinar already in progress.
We're going to take a quick discussion of some of the release date information around Operations Manager 2012. We're going to briefly discuss the fact that we're going to do another one of these, which will be focusing on migration considerations and when that's going to happen. One of the things I'm very excited about is actually seeing the presentation from our Savision folks here related to live maps and what they're going to be doing around Operations Manager 2012. And I'll tell you all as a group on this, I have not even seen this yet, and I'm very excited to hear what they've got in place on it. And then finally, I want to wrap this up to leave a little bit of time, or as much as possible, to give you a chance to be able to ask the Q&A items that you want to know about. In terms of Q&A, if it's related to Operations Manager in any capacity and I'm not under NDA, it's fair and open game. So any questions you want to ask, please feel free to bring them up to the panel for discussion. So with that, let's launch into things. For those of you who have not heard this yet, one of the first and major changes that's going to happen within Ops Manager 2012 is around the arena of integrated network monitoring. I'll start with kind of painting the picture in terms of what we have at the moment. What we have at the moment for Operations Manager is what I'm going to call rudimentary network monitoring out of the box. We can do some SNMP level monitoring, and I'll come back to that. TCP port monitoring is pretty easy. There's a free ping pack that's available out there from a couple different sources. There is third-party management packs which augment in this area, but the out-of-the-box SNMP level functionality that's provided is very rudimentary. As I've said before a couple times, I don't speak MIB. It's not one of my languages, and unless you really understand SNMP and MIBs and things of that nature, it's not very intuitive, and it also really doesn't scale to the levels that are really needed within Ops Manager 2007. So, here's where life begins to change around Operations Manager 2012. The first big piece of this is that it's an integrated technology. This is not an add-on. This is not a separate download or a third-party solution. This is integrated into the product, and it's built upon the EMC Smarts technologies. There was an acquisition that they did years ago, and it was supposed to have been integrated into Operations Manager, and this has now come to fruition. They discussed this briefly at MMS 2011. That this was coming, and the screenshot that you see here shows us an example of the types of information that we see here. It's not just a high level like I can do with a TCP port check and tell me whether it's up and down in its response time. This is much more detailed. This will give me information about the examples you see before, health states associated with certain ports, memory availability, things of that nature. There's a lot more depth to it. The discovery process is actually very well integrated, and we're going to take a look at this in the demo environment. There's lots of different options available, but it's as simple as running the discovery wizard. We can do an explicit or a recursive type of discovery. We can have these scheduled. We can run them on demand, and we'll take a look, like I said, about this in the demo in a little bit. The first key piece to think about related to this is Operations Manager's focus for network monitoring is really around what ports are relevant for our particular environment. So, as an example, if I have an Operations Manager server, an agent on a system that is monitored by Operations Manager, and I've got the network monitoring components in place, it's going to take the ports that that server is connected to and other ports that are connected to other servers that have agents, and it's going to monitor those by default. So we can do a lot from that. The network monitoring pieces are kind of built from an Ops Manager perspective. In terms of we look at what's relevant from an Ops Manager perspective versus maybe what's relevant from what a network administrator might want to see. And granted, it can do both, but we start from the position of I want to know what's relevant for this application, which in turn translates to I want to know what's relevant for this particular server. So you can see an example here of a vicinity view where I have a particular switch which is connected to multiple different systems, and we can tell the health states associated with those. And one of the first things I started thinking about with this is distributed application design. So now I can start to integrate the health of my network components, those pieces that are relevant to my distributed applications, directly in through the Ops Manager environment. There's also extended monitoring available. Extended is, you saw the example in the previous screen where we showed memory, or 2 screens back where we showed memory health and things of that nature. That's the type of deep extended monitoring that we can get with some of the devices as well. There are 834 currently listed devices, including 583 different Cisco switches and routers. At the end of this presentation, there's actually a slide with a series of URLs which will give you all of the background behind each of the different pieces of technology that we're talking about here. So I just want to give you the stats in terms of what's out there. It's actually kind of staggering, the sheer numbers of network devices that are going to be able to be monitored with Operations Manager, and a big step forward. And I implied this, but I didn't flat out say this, but if you notice the different dashboard views, we have a vicinity view. These are the new dashboard functions that are available in Ops Manager as well. So there will be dashboard functions built on management pack levels. So as an example, if I add a SQL management pack, there will be a separate management pack which will be dashboard information specific to SQL servers. And the expectation is the same thing will occur within things like SharePoint, Microsoft Exchange Server, and the rest, as well as you can author your own custom dashboards. These that you see here show us the examples of showing health state and statistics associated with a particular network device. So they took the network functionality monitoring and they've rolled this into the dashboard components as well. So we get the benefits of both of those new functions. So the next logical question is, okay, if I'm monitoring this and I'm getting more than up, down, and response time, what types of stuff am I getting? It's the standard consultative answer on it varies. It varies dependent upon the device. But these are the types of things you'd be looking for. So not only up and down on the device level, but up and down on a port and interface level. What does the volume of traffic look like, its utilization, your drop in broadcast rate, as well as statistics that we would expect, things like processor utilization on that box and free memory. And there are some in-depth memory counters that are also available that are specific only to Cisco at this point in time. I think the general way that I'm looking at the network monitoring is this. I see it as greatly augmenting the Operations Manager's single pane of glass approach. And I think if you've got an existing network monitoring solution in place, that may be great. That may be something that you want to keep and you want to roll with. But it may be something where you look at this and say, okay, I want to take a look at Ops Manager network monitoring, see what it does for me, and see if it would replace that functionality, or if I would be better off to take and integrate my network monitoring solution that I already have into Operations Manager. One of the other great parts of this is that they did not skimp in some of the areas that are really easy to skimp on. Reporting can be very easy to skimp on. So they have included several in-the-box reports, things like you see on the right-hand side here, our interface error packet analysis, and what does our traffic volume look like, memory and processor utilization, standard out-of-the-box reports that we would be using for these types of devices. And as most of you who use Operations Manager probably know, Operations Manager is built on a framework so that it's using SQL reporting services as the back-end pieces of this. The data that we're writing here, since we can tell it's available in a report, we know that, as an example, take this processor utilization. It has to be being written both to the Operations Manager database and to the Operations Manager data warehouse. The data warehouse, so we get these reports. So what that means in essence is these are standard performance counters that we can use in performance views in Operations Manager, as well as they're standard performance counters that we can gather information on and use them in a reporting structure like what you're seeing right here. And as I mentioned earlier, this is also integrated into the Ops Manager 2012 dashboarding functionality. This is a big leap forward from my perspective. I think dashboards have been a personal area that I've been very interested in, and how do we surface information for Operations Manager? And they've done a really good job of really showcasing the dashboard functionality within the network monitoring functionality. So with that, I am going to do a switch over here and see I can share out a different item here. One moment, please. All right, and I'll give that a few seconds here to be able to paint.
Yeah, I think we're pretty good now.
Excellent. So we've got the ability to see this. So this is, for anybody who has not seen this yet, this is Operations Manager 2012, and it should look very familiar to what you've already seen. The look and the feel of Operations Manager has not changed significantly since the days of 2007 R2. We've got kind of the same color scheme that we're used to associated with this. But if you do notice here where we're at, now I have, as an example, network management here, and discovery rules of network devices, and my network devices in a pending management state. I also have a section down here that I'm going to highlight called resource pools, because we will take a quick look at resource pools as part of the process where we go through network management. We'll talk more about resource pools later, but I'm going to point out that there are several of them that are in here by default. The three of them that you see available here, the AD assignment resource pool, all management servers resource pool, and the notification resource pool. So if I wanted to discover a network device, it's as simple as running the discovery wizard. I still have my Windows computers, my Unix computer options associated with this, and I have a network devices option. So this is designed to discover and monitor devices using the SNMP functionality. So we'll start with our general functions. So I can call this my network devices. In a production environment, I'd probably give it something more than that. Give it some more details related to what its description is, what I'm going to try to discover here. In my available server section, I can grab any of my different management servers. I only have one in my environment right now, so that one is the only one shown. Or I could create a management pool specifically for my network devices. So this is something we'll need to think about from an architecture perspective, which we'll talk about more later, but pools are going to directly impact how many management servers we're going to want to have and what we want them to do. There are three available pools. I'm going to just take my individual server, as I mentioned. So I get an option here where I can do an explicit discovery, where I discover only the devices that I'm specifying. Or I can do a recursive. So that's going to get the ones that I discover, and it's going to look in their ARP tables and find something from that, if there's something out there as well. On my next tab, it's actually using a run as account, which you defined for your community string. So I've already defined my community string for my environment, which I can easily select, or I could define a different one or multiple ones. And then I can either add individual devices. So I could put in the IP address associated with the device that I want to discover. I can choose the different accounts that I'm going to use, in this case, my community strings. Or if I have a large number of things that I want to be able to discover, I can do an import process on that to import them from a text file. So what I've done here is I've actually created a network text file which contains just the IP addresses of the specific network devices that I want to discover. And as you should be able to see there in a second, what it's actually done is it's actually added the different 192, 168 account or IP addresses that I've associated with this. Now I can set specific includes to include some specific devices. And in addition to that, I can set excludes that I can say I really don't want it to have discovered this. And then finally, from a scheduling and discovery perspective, I can either run the discovery rule manually, or I can set it scheduled to run at a specific point in time. The default condition on this is a 2 o'clock on Saturday configuration. So with a summary on that, it shows me what I'm going to discover, what description is on it, what community string I'm using to get that information, how it's going to discover, how many devices are specified on that, and then finally when it's actually going to run that discovery. So I can create this discovery process, and we'll go through and add that into my discovery rules which are available. And then I will show you what those look like. So I can run the network discovery rule immediately after completing. In this case, I can also go into my discovery rule here. I can right-click on it, and I can do a run or discover devices on it or make changes associated with that. So that's a quick look at the network discovery functionality in Ops Manager. I'm going to switch back over to a PowerPoint presentation here. One moment. All right. And we are back in We are back in the that presentation. Excellent. So top reason number 2, we've spent some time going through the network monitoring components. Another one of the big components that we really need to think about here is around the area of application performance monitoring. There's been some significant changes in the area of APM and the functionality that's available in Ops Manager 2012. The first big one, which most people have heard about, is the integration of .NET monitoring into Operations Manager. And within Ops Manager, this occurred via, let's see, one second, for the panelists on the, if there are specific questions that you guys want, please interject with those, and I'll leave that out there for the panelists in case there are. All right, so APM has been augmented significantly, first off, as I mentioned, in the .NET areas. With the Avocode purchase, what they've done in essence is they've taken the ability to do deep dive level .NET monitoring within Operations Manager, but they've built it into the product as kind of what, like the network monitoring pieces, not really as a bolt-on, but really as a built-in integrated first-class citizen into the product. With that acquisition, what they've done is they've allowed us to be able to say, I want to watch this specific application and how it's functioning, and I want to be able to set a threshold on that. And the threshold, in essence, says, what, one second, I'm taking a quick look at the question, I apologize. There was a question asked from the last section, was the import file for network discovery just IPs, or can you use predefined accounts, etc.? The version that I defined there actually just included the IP addresses, and we can take that as a sidebar discussion in terms of could we make a more complex input file on it. But we can definitely make changes once that file's been added. You can change each one of those individuals in terms of how they're discovering. Sorry, I let myself divert over to the networking stuff. I'll hold on any Q&A for the other Q&A as we get to that point. But with the .NET monitoring, there's a couple things you need to remember. First is you need to have the base operating system management pack in place, and you need to have the IIS-7 management pack in place. And what these do is these add a new template called the .NET Performance Application Performance Monitoring template. And what they can do is they can say, I want to monitor this particular .NET application. So we say, in essence, if it has gone past this point of time, if it takes longer than, say, a second to execute a transaction, then I want to get an alert on that, and I want to be able to dig into that particular .NET application and find out what took this amount of time to be able to have it execute. Was it something that was running in the code? Was it executing a SQL query? Was it doing something different? And if it's a SQL query, as an example, will you be able to take it all the way down to the SQL query that was executed and why it took that long to be able to execute? Those are the types of things that application performance monitoring through the .NET pieces are allowing us to do. We've really seen good benefits in this in the areas of especially like SOA type transactions where they're kind of written, they've got inputs and they've got outputs, and they're released into the wild. And what the application performance monitoring piece allows us to really be able to do is tear that apart and find out when something's taken a long time. On to the next piece of this, they've actually directly integrated both the Application Advisor and the Application Diagnostics consoles. Both of those components are installed and available. You go to Start, Programs, System Center Operations Manager, and they're right there. Those consoles allow us to be able to do the in-depth analysis of these pieces of .NET functionality, and they're directly added as soon as you install Operations Manager now. But Microsoft actually did not stop with application performance monitoring just in the .NET section. They also added the ability to do more in-depth monitoring around J2EE. So we can do J2EE application servers, WebSphere versions, WebLogic, JBoss, Tomcat. So a lot of different features of application perspective that we haven't really had before. And actually, I think this is a really big step for Microsoft because this is taking something that they could very well have left to a third party and building it into the product, even though it's not really a Microsoft platform. So I think it's impressive that they actually went that direction. So these are, if you have J2EE, WebSphere, WebLogic, I've definitely seen some organizations where we needed to do some JBoss monitoring and things of that nature. Moving on to top reason number 3, why would you want to go to Operations Manager 2012? And there's some big changes around the area of architectural enhancements in Ops Manager 2012. So the first thing is, for those of you who are Ops Manager administrators, I know if you weren't muted you would cheer with me on this, the RMS is gone. Or the analogy that I use on the regular basis when I explain the role of the root management server to most people is either the concept of what I call the Highlander analogy. And the Highlander analogy is there can be only one. And you better not lose that one is what it comes down to. The RMS was unfortunately a limitation of the design of how Ops Manager was put together, that there was a single point which was very, very important that does lots of specific things, and only that system does those particular things. It was a necessary part of the design, but it unfortunately resulted in you really had to throw some heavy-duty hardware at this system. If you wanted to make it highly available, you either had to virtualize it, which ran kind of contrary to the concept of throwing lots of hardware at it. And if you virtualized it, you had to make it on a highly available virtual platform to provide high availability. Or you had to go the direction of clustering it, and it's a non-cluster aware application. The installation process, if I remember correctly, was 9 pages specifically for how to be able to install a clustered RMS. So again, to recap it, the RMS is gone. There are multiple MSs now, and there's something called an RMS emulator role. The emulator role is, in essence, a role that's available on the first management server that's installed, and it handles anything that the RMS would have specifically had to deal with before, legacy RMS type functionality. Now, all of the other pieces of functionality that the RMS would normally do, things like group calculation, notifications, all of those types of things are actually done now through the pool of available servers. So those get applied into a pool. Microsoft has an algorithm which actually figures out which ones run in which at any one point in time, and they balance out across those. So that what the result of that is, in essence, is a couple of things. One is, since we can now we don't have to have the RMS pieces of it, we can increase the scalability of this. We have that lack of that particular architectural bottleneck that we had before. That increases our scalability as well. One of the big reasons why is when Microsoft first released like the specs on the RMS, it wasn't really that heavy from a hardware perspective. But what they found is over time, it really needed to be some pretty heavy-duty hardware. And part of the reason on that was it was very intensive on the memory, because what happened is it loaded the whole configuration service store. The config data was actually in memory on the RMS. So that took up a lot of resources. And what they've done now is they've actually moved that store config data into the database instead of in the memory. So each of the different management servers is actually talking to the database server to be able to get that information, which opened up the possibility of doing these types of things. So I don't think there will be anybody mourning the loss of the RMS. It is gone, and that's okay. We're fine with that. As long as we've got an emulator to be able to handle specific packs that are designed to run specifically off the RMS, we're good to go there. And now that we have multiple MSs, we can scale this further. The other one that's a big change here, and you saw some of this when we were taking a look at things in the demo environment, is that management servers can now be in pools. You see the 3 that are assigned here down below. You see the AD assignment, the management server, the notification resource pool. I look at these kind of analogous to a FSMO role or an operations master role in Active Directory. You've got a schema master and you've got an infrastructure master and the rest. These are kind of like different roles that occur within the pool in essence. Within that pool, all these different things get kind of handed out across the board, but you don't really control where these particular FSMOs go. And the goal of a pool, in essence, is to kind of distribute the workload among different management servers. Some of the things that I mentioned before, I mentioned group cal, but there's also the other ones that are listed here: availability, distributed health monitoring, health rollup, database grooming, notification. Those are the different pieces that get distributed. But let's take this and roll it back as an example to our network monitoring. So within our network monitoring, we may very well want to have a dedicated set of management servers that all they do is monitor our network devices. Well, I can create a pool for those, and I can have that pool of management servers keep an eye on my various different network devices. So I think the pools are going to become an important piece of how this comes together. They're also very relevant from a synthetic transaction perspective. But I very much want to be able to have a pool of multiple different servers that I'm using as watcher nodes for, let's say, a web synthetic transaction that logs into my website and makes sure that it's working correctly. Those are the types of things that I would love to be able to deploy to a pool. All right, top reason number 4, integrated dashboards. And it's interesting. Some folks may have heard me discuss this in the past, but I'm going to put this out from my perspective. Operations Manager 2007 really missed the boat in this particular area. There was a lot of things they were working on when they released Ops 2007. For those who don't know the history associated with it, they wrote MOM 2000 and then MOM 2005 from the same code base. They were in process of writing Operations Manager 2007, and they wanted to move it from focused on a server to focused on an entity, because Microsoft came to this interesting conclusion that everything in the world is not actually a server, and that as you design towards an entity with properties, the server is an example of one of those, but not everything in the world is a server. And what they found was they actually had to re-architect the entire framework for Operations Manager. So it's actually a rewrite between MOM 2005 and Operations Manager 2007. Which brings up, and I saw a message in the QA there, a question about things like, can I do this? I used to be able to do this in MOM 2005. I think the question was, can I use the SNMP notification channel that I had in MOM 2005? And the answer to that, I'm pretty sure, is no, unless you're going to do it through some sort of a command channel notification through a custom action there. And the reason why comes back to kind of this history of it, which is, in essence, it's a rewrite between MOM 2005 and Ops 2007. We both get the benefits of that, and we get the negatives of it at the same time. But to the original topic here, on the area of integrated dashboards, this is something that was really missed. I mean, Configuration Manager has a dashboard product. Service Manager has a dashboard product, but Operations Manager did not have a built-in dashboard product. There have been some bolt-ons that have come on since that point in time. Many of you may be familiar with the service level dashboard, which shows you service level agreement information. And then there was a dashboard that, of course, Savision, created the whole Live Maps dashboard, so we can actually view health states associated with, things on a knock view and things of that nature. Microsoft brought in Visio integration, which does some similar technologies to that. And then on top of that, you have technologies like they added a Service Manager dashboard, which lets you show gauges and charts from the rest of it, and we actually co-opted that. If you want, go out to www.systemcentercentral.com, and we actually have a downloadable Ops Manager dashboard based on the Service Manager framework. So we kind of co-opted it for Ops. But all of this comes back to the fact that there were no integrated dashboards in the product. So this is a big area that was kind of missed. Now, they're not missing it anymore. So I mentioned this briefly, but dashboards are distributed as a management pack now. So you may very well pull down, I mentioned the example of SQL Management Pack, and then a SQL Dashboard Management Pack as well, which will provide the dashboard functionality. Dashboards are created with either a dashboard view or a grid view. So a dashboard view, in essence, says, and we've seen this in the Ops 2007 environment right now, is I want to say I have 4 different pieces that I want to put on this dashboard: top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, or 9 of them in a grid. And what that allows us to be able to do that grid functionality. Within columns, I can just say I'm going to have column 1, column 2, column 3, and I'm just going to drop widgets on top of these different areas and build downward off of these. I really like the grid stuff. Actually, I've been kind of digging the grid stuff. So widgets are added to the layout in the dashboard view. So we create a, let's see, this is actually, the column view is shown here on the right. But what it actually happens is we define the different column layouts. We say how many different columns or how many different pieces of the grid we're going to have, and then we drop widgets into those different pieces. The widgets that are currently available include the alert, performance, and state views. Those are the built-in widgets that are available. There are more expected. This is just kind of a starting point on it. The first one that I'm going to point out here, which I think is really interesting, it's been my favorite so far, is the performance view. If you take a look at the performance view, I've got a friend that I worked with on Ops Manager, and we use a network monitoring or a monitoring product which integrates to Ops Manager and tells us about the health of VMware systems. Well, within that, we may have hundreds of different CPU counters, and trying to figure out in Ops 2007 in a performance view which one of these things has a high value is phenomenally difficult. Well, in Ops 2012, what you can do is you can actually use this top performance counter view, which allows you to be able to sort these so you can sort by the maximum value and much more easily and quickly locate the particular piece that you're looking for. Another big point to consider on this is a consistent user experience, and this is a massive shift from previous versions. There's an example shown here with what the Operations Manager console looks like, what the web console looks like, and what the SharePoint console looks like. So these same dashboard widgets that we're putting into Ops Manager, we put them in the Operations console, they'll run there. They'll also appear in the web console, which is Silverlight based, much closer to the actual Operations Manager console now. Or you can integrate these web console or these widgets into SharePoint as well. They can be added in there, and there's some great articles out there on how to do that right now. And with that, I think we are actually going to shift presenters and let our folks from Savision take over and show some cool stuff.
Great. So I'll start with Savision has always had a very strong relationship with Microsoft when we build our products. We work very closely to make sure that we continue to build a very complementary product, and we'll continue to do that. As such, we're committed to supporting new versions of System Center Operations Manager in a very timely manner. In fact, if there are no late-breaking changes, we expect Live Maps to support the new version of SCOM on the same release on the SCOM release date. So Live Maps has been a key add-on feature for Operations Manager 2007, and we expect it to continue to be a key feature, a key add-on in Ops Manager 2012. Two features I'll point out that differentiate us from other visualization options are dynamic maps and automatic group generation. So dynamic maps allows rules to be defined which will determine which objects belong to a particular map, and these will be maintained, or at least ease the maintenance of these maps. So you could define a rule which looks at properties of an object that have been discovered by Operations Manager, and it will determine if these objects are supposed to be a part of this map. So this way you don't have to manually maintain these maps. The second feature, automatic group generation, makes it very easy to target other features of Operations Manager. So for example, every live map that is created, a group is created within Operations Manager for that map. This makes it very easy to target this map to service level tracking, reporting, and even things like controlling maintenance mode. So here I'm showing already, this is the Operations Manager 2012 console with live maps working within the console much like it is today. So here I have a map of New York State with some objects that I've discovered, much like we have it today in the Live Maps integration with Operations Manager. I have the full integrated experience. So I jump back. Oops, bear with me. So I don't know if you saw the right-click menu here. I'll just give you a second for latency, but you can jump into the Health Explorer here or jump into the performance views, much like we can today. So I anticipate this will be a very useful set of features to help with migrating from Operations Manager 2007 to 2012. And we do have upgrade protection to sort of make that purchasing easier. And there are some substantial discounts for those purchasing in this month. And I believe there's a slide later in the deck that will detail those programs. So I want to jump into some of the new dashboarding features that Cameron was just pointing out with widgets. So here I've created a very simple dashboard view with three independent views with the new widgets, the state widget, the alert widget, and the performance widget. And at a surface, it may look like these widgets are very similar to what's already capable in the existing 2007 console. Now, up in the top right of each widget here, hopefully you can see this, I have a couple options to personalize and to configure each of these widgets. This is where we'll really see the key improvements in these widgets. So here's the name I've given the widget. Now, here's the object I've targeted for this state view. I can determine which state should be displayed here, so I can control if I only want to see critical objects in the state view, I can do that. And another nice feature here is I can not only sort by, but group by. In this example, I have only one object, but I'll show you the group by in the alert view. So if I jump into the configuration of the alert widget, same thing, I have my scope, which properties I want to display, and here I can group. Here I'll choose to group by the source. Just take a minute here, and what it'll do is it'll take all the alerts I have here and group them by the source, which in this case is the machine that has generated the alert. This is going to give me a very easy to consume way to look at this data and determine what alerts are associated with which server. Give it a second here to refresh. Bear with me one moment. While that refreshes, I'll move to the performance widget here. So it first starts off with asking me for an object that I wish to look at. So I've picked my Ops Manager instance in this case. I can click Add to pick the performance counters. And the really nice thing here is I'm going to be presented with only the performance objects or performance counters that Operations Manager already has data for. So I can browse through the objects that it has, which counters it has data for, and even the instance level. Click on the counter I want, add it to the view, and away I go. Another new powerful feature is asking for the time range in which to show data in this widget. So with Operations Manager 2007, you're constrained to showing data from the operations database. That's no longer the case. This performance widget is now capable of pulling in data from the data warehouse, enabling you to go back many days, weeks, months, or even years of performance data being displayed in these graphs, which is a big shift from the performance view that you're used to in the Operations Manager 2007 console. And my alerts view doesn't seem to have updated, so I'll just continue to move on here. So I wanted to give a few examples of what Live Maps may be doing with these new widgets. Now this is still prototype level thinking, but we wanted to show you what are some of the possibilities that we could have here. So here I have a business application defined with some key performance metrics about that business application defined below. Second example I have here is with a server rack with the applications that are running on that rack, and then again some key metrics on the side here. I've used the state diagram view here showing the applications that are running, as well as their health, and then I have the connected users and user response time. So you can see how many of the different types of maps, whether they be geographical, business process, distributed applications, or even custom drawings like this one, can be really nested in. And when used in combination with some of the new alert, state, and performance widgets, it really creates some unprecedented powerful views for Operations Manager. Switch back to the Operations Manager console. One other thing I want to show here, if I open up the task pane, there's a new task here for one of Savision's newest products called Vital Signs, which allows for real-time performance troubleshooting. And we fully integrate with Operations Manager to not only provide tasks to launch in context from alerts and objects. I'll jump to an instance that's already open here. And what this is going to do is going to give us a real-time view of performance data, as well as some state information like the services and processes on that monitored node. And there's a few things I want to point out here that relate back to System Center. So each of these event icons here represent a culmination of a few event sources. The first and foremost is from Vital Signs itself, which has its own built-in thresholds. The second is from the event log, so it's going to pull in any warnings and critical events from the system and application logs. And then finally, from both Operations Manager and Service Manager, we're going to pull in any incidents and alerts that have targeted this device and display them in context of the performance graph. So we can see here that a change in Service Manager has made an impact in performance on this device, or an alert in Operations Manager is associated with some degradation in performance. And it really provides a compelling view into how this data is, or how the device is performing. And last but not least, the latest version of Vital Signs will also pull in historical data from the data warehouse from Operations Manager. So as soon as you connect, we'll see all the data that Operations Manager already knows about with this device, for instance, for page faults, and combine that with all the alerts and incidents from Ops Manager and Service Manager, and stitch that together with real-time data to really give you a complete picture of what this device is doing. So we really feel that with the high-level views that LiveMaps provides, the powerful monitoring that Operations Manager provides, and then the detailed drill down and performance troubleshooting properties of Vital Signs, that together they provide a very compelling monitoring solution. So with that, I'll pass it back to Cameron and Ron.
Feature 5, top reason 5 for deploying Ops Manager 2012. And I know a lot of people are going to look at this and you're going to say, oh, come on, that was a cop-out. I am literally telling you everything that I am allowed to tell you related to Feature 5. Here's what we know. We do know that there is a non-publicly announced feature that is scheduled to be added to Ops 2012. We do know that it covers an area that Ops Manager has not worked in historically. We do know that this is not some sort of a fringe thing that was just kind of out there. This is something that's been asked for a while. It's been a frequent ask, and we do expect that Feature 5 will most likely be announced at MMS in 2012. So there is one more biggie out there, but it is not public yet, and they have not given us any information about what that's going to be yet. So I guess it's a good reason to attend MMS. Release dates. Here's what we know on this so far. The first public Ops Manager 2012 beta was released on 7/21. We do know historics in terms of what Microsoft does with next steps. They generally will do an RC, an RTM, and a GA. So an RC, we would expect should be the next iteration that we're going to see in Operations Manager, and we'd expect probably pretty soon, but I don't have any dates on that, nor do I have any dates on RTM or GA. Generally speaking, the delta between RTM and GA is pretty close. So when we hit RTM, we hope that GA would be very quickly thereafter. Microsoft did commit at the Microsoft Management Summit 2011 that all System Center products would have their new revisions completed before MMS 2012. So the state that I would put these at, in essence, is I would expect that all of the System Center products should be updated before MMS 2012, which is 4/16/2012. Now, as an important note in this area, there was a discussion and a presentation just last week where they went through what they called the Unified System Center Installer. That System Center Installer was demonstrated with the System Center Virtual User Group. You can dig up information out there. And what it did is it actually used System Center Orchestrator to, from one location, gather up and install all of the different System Center components. You provided it with the location, the media, and the servers to install it on, and it actually deployed a full System Center environment, something I've personally done manually in 12 hours. It did in 3 hours automated. I'm going to go ahead and just grab a couple of these questions, all right?
Sounds great.
Errol asked a question about, can these 2012 management packs be downward compatible for RMS R2? The answer to that is no. They are going to be dashboard packs that are specifically designed for Ops Manager 2012. There's another question from Donald related to the dashboards. Are they integrated with the management packs? Are we expecting new versions of the MPs? I would expect yes. We are going to be seeing new versions of the management packs. We're also going to be seeing the additions to those. There will be separate MPs specific for the dashboards. There was a great one in here that somebody asked related to the default management pack, and I'll say this much. So this was, Maurice asked the question about the default management pack. For those who've worked in Ops Manager for a while, we all know the default MP is a pain. I actually almost put this in as another one of the top features. They had made some very good steps towards mitigating the damage of the default management pack and actually having overrides be able to route to a correct area versus the default one as it stands right now. So there are some changes coming in the platform regarding that particular area. Excellent. And what we will do is we'll put a blog. I will put up a blog on blogs.catapultsystems.com. If I can get the Savision guys to send me all of the Q&A, I'll try to tackle as much of this as possible between the two of us, or between the three of us. But to answer just a couple other quick ones that are really easy here, quick to answer, does SCOM 2012 use the same core OS management packs that 2007 R2 uses? Yes, it does use the same packs, so your current custom-built packs should work, as well as your new ones, or new ones that become available, will probably at least start being functional for 2007 R2 and 2012, but of course the dashboard packs won't work in the previous ones. And I wish that we had a chance to show you the web console pieces of it. We'll see if we can make a note of that for the next round. There's a lot of good questions in here, or several good questions related to actually migration questions and everything. And those are the types of things that I think what we want to do with those is we're going to want to put those into our next webinar, because we're going to be focusing in on how do you get to Ops Manager 2012, and that's going to be kind of the key focus in that area. Cool. I'll grab a quick last one and then hand it off to you guys, because there's a good one from Sebastian. Will the dashboard packs be free? The ones from Microsoft will be free, but there may be third-party dashboard products. And then there were some questions related at the bottom here. There was a question from Sebastian and a question from Donald that I thought would be good to leave with the Savision folks to talk through while we got people here. Sebastian's question is, what is the difference or benefit of using vital signs instead of SCOM alone? And then Donald's question is the live map product we need, is it installed as a separate product?
Yeah, so I answered him, I guess, just as you were saying that, Cameron. So yeah, Live Maps is a separate add-on to Operations Manager that you will need to install. We do offer free trials, so I suggest that you reach out to sales@savision.com and we can get you set up.
Excellent. So it is a separate product, and then there was a question related to what's the difference or benefit of using vital signs versus SCOM alone?
Oh, good question. So Vital Signs is, again, intended to be an add-on to Operations Manager. It's not intended to be a full-blown monitoring product. What Vital Signs brings is real-time performance data at the order of about 10 and 15 seconds of refreshing performance data. So really where Vital Signs came from is we found that a lot of Operations Manager administrators, when they are faced with an alert, RDP to the box, bring up perfmon, bring up services, bring up a number of native tools. And Vital Signs' purpose is to help facilitate that process and make it very easy to get to the root cause of an Ops Manager alert.
Excellent answer. And with that, I think I'll hand it back to our coordinator here and ask if you want to call it a wrap at this point, and then find a way that we can get all the Q&A and questions all exported out so we can get those written up in some capacity for everybody's asking these questions.